The first step in using X-Sendfile is to make sure that it's installed in your server. Most shared servers won't install this simply because it requires specific configuration for every vhost, and they're just not going to do that. But you can get a VPS or a dedicated server and get it installed on there. If you scroll down here, this is the X-Sendfile page. You can see there's some configuration options here that are explained. But I'm going to scroll down here to where we see a basic configuration for a virtual host. Now this is pretty much all you need inside of the virtual host configuration and the Apache configuration. The X-Sendfile path and the server name. The X-Sendfile path is where it's located, and the server name is the name of the server. And then you can also set a white list of directories where X-Sendfile can be used. So that's what's going on here. When I originally had it set up on my server, it was at too narrow of a directory, so I ended up having to apply it to my base Drupal site directory. So if you end up getting errors in your server logs, just bump up that whitelist so that it's at a higher level. Once it's installed, the way to use it is pretty straightforward. I'm going to jump back to my editor, and this is what I'm doing to run a test to make sure that X-Sendfile is working. Because from a browser perspective, you're not going to know the difference between a file that's sent through PHP or a file that's sent through Apache, so you need to build a test in order to make sure that it's working. Now this example is on a Drupal 6 site, but the basics of hook file download and the other internal core functions that we're going to be looking at are pretty much the same for Drupal 7, not identical, so it's important to extrapolate from what you've learned in the previous videos and apply them to the changes that have been made in the file system here. One of the biggest differences is that instead of getting past the URI, it's getting past a file path. And so we're going to be working with this just a little bit differently. But the basic idea here is the same in that we're returning a set of headers, and the header is going to be X-Sendfile and the full path to the file. In this case, we're using real path and file create path. In Drupal 7, we would use slightly different functions in order to do this. So once this is returned, then it gets handed off to the file system. Let's go ahead and jump to the file.inc file. This is in the includes directory in a Drupal 6 site. And let's look at the file transfer function. Now this again gets called once there have been validation passes in the file download function, which again is basically the menu callback. Whenever you go to a file that's protected, file download gets called as if it was a page. Now in file transfer, what I've done is added a little bit of code. Now this is just a temporary hack to Drupal core in order to test something. So as soon as we're done with this, we would want to remove this because it's not a necessary hack. So all that we're doing here is checking the source. We're making sure that the file name is private/test.png, and this was the file that I added very specifically for testing this. And if it is, then we're going to die, which means we're going to kill the script and output some message that says PHP is taking care of sending this file, meaning the X-Sendfile is not working. If file transfer actually gets called, that means it's too late, that the headers have already been loaded, and X-Sendfile, the header that we set in our hook file download, isn't being recognized. So this is a problem. This means that it's not functional. As soon as we go to our test.png